Heya, I hope you've had a good new year and are enjoying 2022. I'm sure you've noticed by now, but I've changed the channel name to The Gaming Table. We'll see if that works better and sticks. Words are hard. Speaking of words though, today's RPG is Spell, the RPG, by Whimsy Machine Games. Now, normally I start these reviews by talking about where a game is set, what the world is like. Spell's a bit different though, it's actually a setting-neutral system. So, in a game that's all about spellcasters, called speakers, this system can be dropped into a high fantasy, comedic setting, or even a modern, grim, dark setting. The classes they have available do offer a little bit of flavor, but rather than each class having a dedicated history or archetype, they're more about how each speaker approaches magic philosophically. Spell is a game that is all about spell casting. To cast a spell, to overcome an obstacle or a challenge, a player looks at their character's attributes, in this case called impulses, and draws from that attribute or aspect of themselves to cast the spell. Some of these impulses might be for a very logical character, reason, for a very emotional character, feelings, or for a bombastic character, daring. A player will roll a number of dice determined by their impulse, add any bonuses, and then what that allows them to do is to reach into a bag of letter tiles and draw out the number of tiles equal to their successes. With these tiles, they can then spell out the word of the spell they're casting. That's right, in Spell, you spell your spells. If that makes sense. The more you roll, the more options you have to play with. If you wanted to, you could also just use the straight-up impulse to tackle the obstacle before engaging in magic. But where's the fun in that? Spells and what they can do are up to your gaming group to determine. Once a spell has been cast, it's gone forever. Unless a player wants to use a potential point to preserve the spell and make it permanent. A potential point is kind of a pool of points that each character gets at the beginning of the session. Generally, they recommend from 3 to 5. These potential points can be used not only for preserving a spell that a group or a player has really enjoyed, but to also modify their rolls. Say you get a really bad roll, you can use a potential point to buff a skill, then re-roll the dice based on that new number. Players in this game can also be rewarded by the game master for good play. If they did a great role-playing moment, created an interesting spell, or perhaps just are having a really good time, the game master will award them one letter tile. It can only be one at a time, they can't be hoarded, and they do not last from session to session. But if a player needs, they can reach to use this letter tile while casting a spell. While you do have to spell out the spell that you're casting, you're not just bound by strict dictionary definitions of words. In fact, slang is allowed as well as abbreviations, and should you need, you can rotate the letter tile so it looks like the letter that you need. Generally, these spells will be considered bad spells and are not able to be preserved with potential points, but that's still an opportunity for a lot of fun. If you do have a spell that you've preserved with a potential point, you do actually have the opportunity to improve it, I think up to 6 times over a campaign. Once a spell has been cast, you cannot cast it again with a new meaning. Say you cast the word pop and it makes a balloon popping noise. You can't then have that pop reappear to have some drinks fizz. One last little mechanic that I think is really neat is that players can jump onto spells that have already been cast and add their own words, allowing them to modify or even counteract spells that come up in game. This game has a lot of options for both gaming masters and players. There's different types of magic that they could potentially encounter, new forms of equipment, summoning spells, stats for monsters they might encounter, or friendly animal companions or mounts. Spell also includes some options for conflict resolution should characters or players clash at the table. I think what would be most helpful for a game master is there is a little section on how to run a spell casting NPC, and hints to make that interesting and fruitful. I do think the layout of this book could have been a bit clearer. I'm not a big fan of the 2 columns. I understand that's often done to save space though. Otherwise, I have to say the art is really cute and really makes me wonder what kind of games I would be playing with this system. When I was talking to my friends about this game, one of them called it Scrabble with consequences, and that made me really laugh. But she did make me think too, because I hate Scrabble. It reduces words down to just letter scores. In Spell, you're actually engaging with the meaning and the rich aspect of language. I paid $23 for my copy of Spell. I do believe it is available online somewhere a bit cheaper. I just wanted to order it from my local game store pretty quickly. I was too keen to get my hands on it. I believe they've also released a supplement for this one called the Spell Book, and if you guys wanted me to talk about that one, I'd be very happy to get my hands on it and see what that one's about. I do see a lot of potential here for an overarching campaign with a lot of episodes, so I think for what I paid, it's definitely well worth the money. If you had thoughts on today's episode, please leave them down below. I hope you guys are having a lovely new year, and I hope to see you at the gaming table sometime. Bye!